Today's episode is brought to you by the Tears of Dallas Fuel fans.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, The Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much. I just got a notification about a Bills roster move, so I'm very distracted at the moment. But otherwise, I'm doing great.
Is it a good one?
Well, I mean, we had somebody injured, so it's a replacement. But you know,
Oh, okay. Hey,
it's fine. It's fine.
It's not actively bad, and that is a massive positive for the Bills in general. So. Rude, but also true.
Not anymore, but we'll skip that conversation for when it's actually football season.
That is true. We are actually legitimate these days, which is good. But yes, we'll save that for a later time. But for now, we'll talk about a little bit of housekeeping. Of course, everyone knows Blackwatch Report is keeping on. New episode this week about Tier 2, Tier 3, all of the non-Overwatch League Overwatch that you could ever want. Make sure to check them out on their feed. Blackwatch Report or Blackwatch Report without the O on Twitter. Thorn and
the first Contenders Season 2 tournament is done, so I think they're covering that. But yeah, just recorded yesterday, so it'll be fresh for you guys in the feed.
Fresh, and I can confirm that it is uploaded. And I know that they're trying to get a couple. I see the convos going on. They're trying to get a couple of cool interviews. So definitely, if you're in and want to be a true Contenders truther, make sure you're following Blackwatch Report and support Tier 2 there. But Death, anything fun and exciting for you this week?
Nothing too crazy, no. I mean, just watched what was a pretty interesting week of Overwatch League, getting ready for this month's tournament coming up. Nothing really that already happened. I am going to be starting to stream a little Overwatch probably tonight. We'll see what goes on from there, though. So if anybody's interested in watching a brand new Wrecking Ball one trick, who doesn't know any of the tech or fun things you can actually do at the hero yet, so if you want to watch me feed on ball, head over to twitch.tv/deathblowttv. You can check that out. It'll be after the show records tonight. And then, you guys can check that out. Hopefully get some momentum with it and enjoy it and be able to keep doing it a little bit. Been missing Overwatch lately. Want to play more.
Yeah, I really need some sort of spark to do it. I don't know. Overwatch 2, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see. But at least in terms of playing, I just haven't.
Hopefully it gives you something you can grind without having to be on like that top of your game, like the PvE aspect of it. Give you a reason to like be in the world, be excited without having to be like in full try hard ranked mode.
Right. Because I just have I don't want to be competitive in Overwatch. Like that's not what I'm looking to do. So and the modes are all right.
You weren't when you played, so it worked out.
That's true. That is very true. But there's a difference between being high level and being competitive, right?
Sure.
Because you have to play even at plat rank, you're still being competitive. And I don't even want to do that. I just I don't even want to be plat level. I just want to.
You want to throw on ball. You're just jealous of me.
I do.
That's what I heard.
Actually, I never liked playing him. It didn't click for me. I was
you just play the high skill stuff like Moira.
Yeah, I sure do. And Diva. Aim is certainly in my wheelhouse. But for me, I don't know. I didn't do anything fun or interesting. It's all the same stuff. I'm doing a million things, and it's all the same. Every single day in quarantine is the same.
Blevins has been hitting people with moose in his spare time.
That is
and if you want to
true.
know more about it, check out his stream, twitch.tv/theblevins.
I haven't even been streaming lately. I don't know. I don't.
You're a slacker. What are you even doing? What are
I
you doing?
am a slacker. I don't know. I constantly go from like when I stream, I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. People are watching, and then I'm like, I just don't want to stream right now. And I don't think I'll ever be a streamer, and I don't really want to be one. And I constantly go.
It's a tough
between those two
balance
things.
because I get the same way. I was messaging you. Might as well derail a show immediately.
No, why not?
I was messaging you not too long ago. Like, man, I had so much fun setting up my stream for a new game I wanted to try with the virtual reality stuff. Yeah. And then like I turned the stream on, and I'm like, I had more fun setting up the stream than I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is what it is. It's definitely a balance. You know, being a full-time streamer takes a lot. It's never been anything either of me or you've really aspired to, because I really do value my like just private gaming. Like, you know what I mean? Just like me soloing in a game while I'm watching TV or something. Like I really, really enjoy that part of it. So gets lost a little bit, but yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe someday. The other thing for me is like the only time I can stream is at night because, you know, job and such. And it's like if I want to do anything legitimate, right, I can't do like a 35-minute stream. That's just I might as well not do it. So if I'm streaming and I want to do anything legitimate, it's like I need to be streaming till like 2 a.m. And yeah, I'd rather not do. I did that for like 2 weeks, and it's like I think I got myself sick because I was just not sleeping enough, or I was sleeping in way too much at inappropriate times. So, yeah. So
keep real gamer hours right there.
It's true. Completely derailed the show, so let's re-rail the show.
It's news.
Talk about a little bit of news. Ooh, I got a frog in my throat. The Hangzhou Spark have mutually parted ways with their head coach, Mask Paijan. Their head coach, Mask Paijan, will take over as head coach for the rest of the season. We've seen a lot of coaching changes these past like 2 or 3 weeks, Death. Why are we seeing them now? Seems weird.
Well, I mean, it's
weird
not
that they're happening.
It's not super uncommon, right? Because you've still got like, especially, you know, a couple weeks ago when I think a lot of these moves were probably actually happening, and there was a bit of like a transition period with the head coaches and everything like that.
Right.
Maybe not for Hangzhou specifically, because Paijan was already with the organization, just escalated to take on the role as on an interim basis, in all likelihood anyways. But it does make a lot of sense, and you see it in sports too, specifically NFL. 4 games left in the season. We're firing our coach now. The reason being we're actively looking, and it's not a bad look to be interviewing, right? When the other team's seasons end, right? And like they fire their head coaches, you're already available and able to start the negotiation and discussion process with anybody you're interested in. But also everybody's making the playoffs, Blevins. You got to do it now. You can't wait a couple of weeks. That's fair, because is it a playoff? Everybody's making it. Well, tuning in more to find out on Overwatch League. But you know, it's the time to do it. You know, you still got a little bit of time where they can work with the team, try to turn you around a little bit, allow you to that opportunity to maybe go on a run. And yeah, so it makes a lot of sense from the for the future standpoint. Give the new coach, if like let's say Paijan's keeping the job into next season, he's got this time to like work with the players in the new role and find out who he wants to keep, who he wants to let go, and kind of make some of those decisions. So it's not crazy at all, I don't think here. You know, there's the other, you know, you see it a lot happen during the off season, and I think that's because, you know, if you're in the playoff hunt and that coach has you in the hunt, right? Like his job might hinge on whether or not he makes it into the playoffs or whatever, but you know, you've got to give him the season to try, right? Because you just guarantee you're not going to make it if you do it. And you know what I mean? It's just much more less likely to make it, right? Whereas if you're a team thought of to not have much of a chance, and that's the boat I'd put Hangzhou in right now with the way their performances have gone after signing Architect. You know, you do it now because it gives them an opportunity. If you're going to have that uptick that reversal of fortunes,
Right.
there's still enough time for him to actually do something with it and work with it. So
Yeah, you put it like that, it makes a decent amount of sense because it's because of the nature of the
playoffs.
It's really a low risk situation, but it also gives the coaches like some time, like you said, to show some improvement. Or I mean, it's kind of a wash, right? Like if they stay the same, it's whatever. If they fail, it doesn't necessarily put everything on the coaching staff, and it also gives them a chance to really make some big changes coming into the beginning of the season when it actually matters, right? So when you put it in that frame, it does make a lot of sense why we're seeing a lot of these coaching changes happen now. So,
and from the org perspective, now Hangzhou gets a look at Paijan. They get to see how he operates. Do we like that? It really helps inform your decision on at least one of your candidates by doing this now. So yeah,
makes a lot of sense. Up next for the Atlanta Reign, I don't know how you're supposed to say this. Elris LR1S has joined the Atlanta Reign.
We even saw him for a map this week, and I didn't make a note of like how they pronounce it or anything like that. So yeah, Flex support B for the Atlanta Reign is signed. I did get his debut. It was one map in the match that they were crushing in, and then they brought him and Saucy in, and lost, and then subbed him out, brought Dogman back in. They did keep Saucy out there, and then they were able to finish off the match. So I think that's a rough look for Elris here, but not really probably his fault. This was against Dallas, by the way. So yeah, I don't think it's a high impact signing. I don't think Dogman's been a problem for this team or anything like that. I just think it's somebody they want tied to the organization. Now they'll have like kind of the right of first refusal going in the next season. So if they want to match an offer that he gets elsewhere or something like that, or if they think he's just a valuable commodity, you have him under, so that way people got to trade for him or something like that. That's kind of the way I view this, but honestly, not really a player I'm overly familiar with. I don't really recall seeing any of him in tier 2, not type 2. So yeah, I don't know. This one is definitely a bit of a question mark for me personally, but I believe he was with, I'll look it up, but I believe he was with the academy team for a little while. So no, I'm wrong. He was from Third Impact. Yeah, anyways, we'll see how that pans out. Just to kind of a prospective signing, a future signing. I don't think it's anything that's going to impact the roster this season, but we'll see.
Yeah, I hope we are seeing, I mean, I would think that we would be seeing more of that, is these prospects being signed, but maybe teams are being conservative with what they're doing just based on, we don't know what the season is going to look like next year. Like, are we going to have I mean, if you look at it,
COVID budgets too,
COVID budgets. I mean, not, like that is obviously a big thing, but even like there's I mean, if you looked at and like told teams, at the end of season 2, like, hey, on in August of 2020, in the near the end of the season, this is what things are going to look like in the world and in Overwatch League. People would be like, how you? I mean, that's what the world would be doing, right? And
right now,
that's what we're exactly. It's what we're doing now, but you have to imagine. You have to, the thing that you can count on is that nothing can be counted on, right? So you don't want to do anything too crazy because we just don't know what the league is going to look like, what the format is going to look like. And even outside of the COVID stuff, like, I'm sure obviously the teams knew about hero pools, but like that's a pretty big thing, right? And they're still sort of iterating on that with 2-week hero pools and the tournament format, and like, not that a specific signing might make a huge difference, or like the format of it might make a huge difference for a specific signing, but I probably want to keep my cards pretty close to the chest before doing any crazy
Well,
signings like that.
we know what it looks like when a team has a massive gaping absence in their hero pools,
Right.
or just a whole missing character in their
Right.
their roster. And we know what it looks like when they sure don't.
Yeah.
So it's always better to, if you can afford it, if the org has it in their
Right.
budget, to have them, have all your options covered, to have bench
Sure.
players and things like that. So
Yeah.
Atlanta's been very good about that. They're always active. They're always looking to make improvements. And I think even when, they don't work out, there's been plenty of those, but they saw Kodak go to the coaching role, which kind of opened up this spot. So might as well bring in somebody else and see if and how they're able to positively impact your roster. You can always let people go, but the window closed. It is officially closed, by the way.
Yeah.
We might have more signings announced in future episodes because reasons they like to wait, but to tell us about them. But those contracts had to have been signed already, right?
Yeah.
So
nothing new. In
I
terms
don't know
of
exactly when the date is, right? But this signing is probably the last one we'll announce for the year.
But we do have another announcement. Well, we have a couple more announcements. We have one in the land of the Outlaws. Your boy, Raucous, has left the Houston Outlaws.
Yeah, it's a shame. Everybody knows I was down with the thickness, so I was a big Raucous fan.
Yeah.
Big Raucous fan. I was a Raucous, like a truther, essentially, right? Like
you were
always
for a very
standing on
long time.
my soapbox talking about how, of course, you can win with this guy. Like, he's a very smart player. He might not be Jonak levels of mechanically pog on the roll or whatever, but I'm really, really happy for him. He got his World Cup win, right? Like he got the win there. I think that really shut up a lot of the senseless, needless hate that just got piled on him, right? Like this is something we talk about a lot. It's something we're going to be talking about more this episode, about just how you can look bad because your team sucks around you. And like you'd get into those dive metas with Houston where they were just wholly inadequate, right? Like they dive, the other team would dive, Raucous would die because he was the dive target, and then nobody would die on the other side. Like, that's not Raucous's fault.
Right.
That's just like the way the composition worked, and the fact that the team didn't have the tracer or whatever at the in season one. So there was just like constantly weaknesses and holes around him, and it's not like I was even saying he's great or he's irreplaceable or they have to keep him when we were having the roster conversations. It's just you're not like forced into letting this guy go. You can do exactly what they did this year, which was sign somebody, play them both a little bit, find out who fits well with the team better. But either way, he's decided to step away. Like I said, I'm really happy he kind of got his bit of redemption there. Proved it, I think, a little bit, and shut up some of the doubters before he did leave. But very vocally, this is a Valiant retirement. This is a player, I don't know Raucous's background well enough to know if he comes from CS or anything like that.
I don't know either.
A little surprising though to see, I think, a support player go instead of it's previously been like hit scan players and stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure he's just going to be signed immediately to FaZe, which is the first org he played for under Overwatch. So presumably finding a home with somebody, with people he's very comfortable working with. So wish the absolute best to Raucous as he moves on with his career. Had already kind of lost his starting spot on the Outlaws roster, though, so not really much of an impact to the team unless there's an illness or something like that. So put Rappel in a bubble because he's infinitely more valuable now. He can't get sick.
Yeah, I mean, nothing really to add. It's just like he wasn't a starter.
It's an OG retiring, so I think everybody that's a fan of Overwatch for as long as we have been is a little sad to see this one go. Such a wholesome meme topic too, right? Like just the Raucous booty was always a fan favorite to make signs about and stuff like that. And they always gave you a chuckle. So I think for a lot of reasons, Overwatch is a little bit sad to see Raucous go here.
Yeah, he was a good ambassador for the game. I think just
he
was a good
Today Show with Jake and all that stuff. He's been a very valuable member of the community.
Yep. But definitely wishing him the best on his travels. Not literal travels, just shifting games So good on him. But we will round out the segment here, Death, with a couple of changes from the Dallas Fuel, the other Texas team. We'll start with the less exciting one, that the Fuel have parted ways with their assistant coach, Tickety. I mean, I don't imagine there's a lot to talk about in terms of this one, right?
No, I mean, listen, there's no way to discuss this one without discussing the other one.
Yeah.
So might as well read the other announcement.
The Dallas Fuel have released Decay from his contract.
Sure. So here's no big. We'll just throw that out.
Yeah,
there.
we'll just toss it. You know, not a huge, massive,
Decay's
shot
not
into the
show up again. No big deal. Just whatever.
Yeah.
Probably won't impact the team much. Oh wait.
Yeah.
Here's a quote from Hastro, the owner of the org for Dallas Fuel or whatever he's in now. I think just team owner, right? So lots of fuel added to the fire today, pun intended. Skip it next time. We will make some major changes to get the Dallas Fuel back into the fray. Thankful for all of your patience. All of you have the patience. Thankful for all of you have the patience. That's what he wrote. So that's why it was so hard for me to read. I am able to read. Working hard. Expect a lot of news for the team and sweeping changes. Assistant coaches absolutely fall into the category of sweeping changes.
Like
this is a roster
under the rug, and you don't care. We don't care.
This is a roster who both is on a roster basis, like an individual player basis, and organizationally staff based, is going to look wholly different next season. This is just the beginning of it, right? Yeah. This is just cutting ties with some people they definitely don't foresee working with in the future. Yeah. And yeah, listen, Decay's gone. This is massive. The difference between how the Dallas Fuel looked when Decay played versus how they looked when they didn't was the difference between a mid-table team and the Washington Justice. Like, it really was that big of a deal where Decay was just able to pop off and carry matches and completely cover up inefficiencies and deficiency and just like huge, massive mistakes by just killing 4 people forehead. Like, he was really that level of carry. We've talked about it all season, how Decay and Doha as a unit were able to give them a compete level that they really didn't deserve from a roster standpoint, with the other 4 members. There's been other bright spots. I think specifically Notes looked really strong lately. His Sigma's play is massively improving. They're talking about that a lot on the broadcast. We were talking a little bit about Crimzo and Discord earlier about whether or not we think he's somebody you can keep around. I think he's somebody you can keep around, but when you're talking about like sweeping changes and like resetting the roster, I don't know that he's good enough that you keep him around, right? Like, I think Doha is probably the only one likely to stay. And honestly, even that, you might need to just let that go. Sometimes you really do need to fully hit that reset button and just start from scratch and build something brand new, and carrying over even that one piece, right? Like, if it starts to go south and then now all of a sudden Doha's sick of it because it's not his first year with the team, it's his second year with the team, and he's seeing the same things despite new coaching staff, despite all these different changes. It just, if the result is the same, you're then going to have him sitting there wondering like, I just need to leave, right? Like, this org's just broken, and then now he wants out, and now this happens again next year. So as far as Tickety goes, I doubt it was anything personal. I doubt it was anything specific he did or didn't do or anything like that. Now, as far as Decay is concerned, the wording was, we have granted the request of Decay to release him from his contract prior to the end of the 2020 Overwatch League season. Our management is focused on evaluating changes and building a cohesive team that will be positioned for future success. Okay, so this says he wanted out and he asked them to allow him to leave. I know that it's, the whole conversation around this to me is just like so backwards and broken. Like, you've got this section of Overwatch League Twitter that like thinks they did something wrong by releasing him after the signing window was closed. No. That would be something smart to do, right? That would be how you would release a star player if they wanted off of your team. You'd bench them until they weren't able to sign with somebody else, and then you would release them. You don't owe him the opportunity to play for another team this season.
You owe him his contract.
You owe him the opportunity to play Overwatch in the Overwatch League this season. You gave him that opportunity when you signed his contract, okay?
Right.
Like, that's his opportunity. That's what he's owed. He was given that, and he wanted out. So he loses the protection of the organization,
Right.
and they now have a vested, like, they have an obligation, as I view it, to their sponsors, to their fans, and to the rest of the players on the roster that want to be there and want to compete, to give them the best opportunity to do it. Letting Decay walk and join the Atlanta Reign is the wrong way to do it. Yeah. That is a slap in the face to everybody who's ever bought a Dallas Fuel jersey. If you think otherwise, you're backwards and thinking about this wrong. Okay, I want to really stress that because that drove me nuts reading, wow, they really did him dirty, blah, 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 blah.
By granting his request to leave the team.
Oh, those bastards, Blevins. I can't tolerate it, okay? And OGE even made a comment about it, like, really waited until after the deadline, blah, 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 blah. Castro said, I wouldn't do that. Like, I did it the minute he requested it. And apparently he'd stopped showing up to practices, stopped working with the coaching staff. This was like if Crystal had just done everything he did, but like showed up to work to do it, right? Like, honestly did it the smart way, the way that doesn't get you sued for $2.1 million, but still gives you what you want. Take notes, Crystal. This is how you get out of it next time.
Maybe not for him.
Right. But yeah, so apparently the player asked and they granted it, and the timing aspect of it is just coincidence, or Decay didn't realize that was the case when he asked. Don't really know, but it's not the Dallas Fuels organization's job to make sure he beats them in the playoffs this year. In fact, kind of the opposite. So I wanted to get out in front of that.
The opposite.
That's insane to me that line of thinking kind of entered into the fray.
That's like the fact that Decay requested it and it was granted. I don't even understand where you come from to think that.
You come from the selfish place of, I like watching Decay pop off on youtube.com/Overwatch League, and I wasn't ready to stop seeing it. That's honestly the only way I can get myself into that place, right? Like, if you're not a Dallas fan at all and you just like thought Decay was great and enjoyed watching him play, right there with you. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't care about Dallas at all. Yeah.
But I really enjoyed watching Decay put up ridiculous performances. Like, as long as it's not against the team I'm rooting for, really happy to see it, to be perfectly honest with you.
Right.
But like, yeah. So also, I think it's crazy because we kind of have the impression that the exact opposite is true of the Dallas Fuel, right? Like, I don't know a ton about the organization outside of how they operate in Overwatch, but one thing I can tell you is that the OG Dallas Fuel roster, like the Envy that dominated pre-Overwatch League, they drink the Envy Kool-Aid, like they bleed Envy colors. Like, those guys, as far as I know, think of Astro as their father, like their second father. Like, they are just in, like, every indication I've ever seen is that Dallas goes way above and beyond to treat their players phenomenally. We've seen
like, why is AKM still on the team?
That are super impressive. Right. Like, how many people are on the bench?
Why was Mickey on the team for so long? Yeah, exactly.
No reason. Like, because, well, we signed that contract and we don't want to just cut them because we think that makes the player look worse than if their contract just expires and they go. See, so like, we have tangible evidence that they operate in a way that's detrimental to themselves, to be perfectly honest with you, but admirable at the same time. It's not me bashing them for it. I do think it's admirable. Wanting to take care of your players, like the way Astro talks. I've made a lot of jokes about Dallas. I'll never give them that label of like being bad on their players and whatnot. So yeah, that whole like Decay was wronged or whatever is so. That's just the Overwatch stan Twitter, like, people that just have thrown logic and reasoning out the window and just whatever happens to a player is terrible and the org's evil and like blah 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 blah. So
that's the big thing. And I don't know if we want to get into the other thing where someone on Twitter was yelling about an org or a team and their decision.
That train wreck will just stay clear of that
Okay.
one. That one seems to have resolved itself. There's no
Okay.
other side of that conversation.
No,
so
there
we
isn't.
won't-
But what it boils down to is that no matter what, it seems that people are that, and by people I mean the Twitter/Reddit verse of Overwatch League, takes the side of the player no matter what. Where it's like, oh, player didn't like their contract, so they asked the team to terminate the contract. Team says okay, and the player is not in the best scenario ever because they wanted to terminate their contract after the trading deadline. Why is that the team's fault at all?
The only time I've seen it go the other way is when the player is a pedophile, and that is
well,
correct.
Yeah, that is
Yes,
also correct.
That's
true.
Is correct. But there's other times, like the player can also do things that are less than making them like terrible human beings.
Right. Like Crystal,
and,
for instance, people are like, oh, well, that seems like a lot of money to sue someone for. It's like, so you're saying he didn't do the thing? Well, no, he did, but it seems like a pretty big number. It's like, I don't think you understand. And then I just have to go back to the thing, like, there are a lot of people on Twitter and on Reddit and that watch Overwatch League who are, and I don't even mean this in a demeaning, well, I kind of mean it in a demeaning way, but some people are literally 13 years old. Like, not even a joke. Like, they are actually 13 years old, and that's okay because everyone is 13 years old at some point, right? You don't understand things, and that's great. You learn, and this is a learning experience. But if you're
there's plenty of things that me and you are at a 13-year-old level of comprehension about,
right?
And would get wrong and backwards. But yeah, like there's
I think there's some takes that we
feel like we have.
There's takes that we've had, and people have that we weren't. There's a specific take I'm not going to bring up because I don't want to bring it up again. That we had where we were pretty much like, why do people care about this? And people in Discord and on Twitter were like, this is why. And I still don't think that we agree with it, but it's like, I guess we are just not informed about it. We don't care enough to be informed on it. So whatever. But like, just think about it for 2 seconds of like even if like, why, like it's not always the player that, like, just because the org does something that's good for them doesn't mean it's wrong, right? Even if it was, they delayed the contract. Like you said, the team absolutely should do that. The team doesn't have to bend the knee to the player every single time. Now, that does not mean that teams should treat players unfairly or poorly. It means that the team has obligations and the team has incentives and the team is trying to do something and the players are also trying to do something, and sometimes those come up against each other, like in this case. But
people seem to expect the organizations to shoot themselves in the foot and or suffer massive financial losses if it benefits the players
even a little bit,
remotely, the littlest bit, and that's just crazy to me, at least. I can't follow that line of thinking, but
I can follow it. It's just wrong.
I don't want to harp too much on that because I think there is a really, really valid conversation to have here. And I think I've set it up and defended Dallas enough where I can start to look into this more, because something's rotten in Dallas here, Blevins, to me. Okay. Season 1, Rascal gets traded for and just can't work with the organization or the team or whatever, and just has to get out. Like, refuses to play, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact specifics of it. Fine. Season 2 of Effect was a little bit Season 1 as well, if I'm remembering correctly, and then it spilled into mostly being Season 2. Season 2 is Effect. They also trade for OGE, another Korean player who comes over, joins the roster. OGE can't make it through 2 stages without needing a stage off in stage 3. Just needs just something about the experience. He couldn't handle it. This season, OGE's a Los Angeles Gladiator has no problems, has made it through the season. It's probably been much more stressful, much more strenuous. I mean, granted, there's not like travel and stuff, but there wasn't a whole lot of travel in Season 2 either. He went to 1 homestand, maybe 2. I can't imagine travel was the reason why
Right.
he was so taxed or what have you. And then now this season, they can't keep Decay through the entire season. This is now 3 seasons in a row and 4 Korean star players that have failed to make it through a full season playing for this organization.
Yeah.
It's not happened once with a Western player. It's not happened once with a European player. It's only with the Korean talent. So there has to be something here to me. I don't know what it is. I'm just spitballing at this point, but it's officially a pattern. It's officially something that I think requires some critical thinking and looking at, probably mostly by Hastro and the Dallas Fuel organization, about how do they resolve it? Because there's multiple ways you do it. You change your culture, you change your methodology, something to fit them. Because if I had to put my finger on it and guess, right, we always talk about the massive differences between how everything works between the West and with Korean, just the organizations, how they approach things, how they work through problems, how they handle their prep time. And the Koreans tend to just grind. Like, well, what if we just played for 20 hours a day and then we slept for 4 hours a day? And I think we can make that work as long as we line up our 2 4-hour sleeps into one. So we play for 20 hours and we sleep for 8 hours and we play for 20 hours. I think we can do it. Like, that's an exaggeration, but roughly what it feels like, right? And from the American side of things, we tend to like value things like time away from the game, and you know, like maybe you need to just unplug for a little bit and reset, and like, you know, it's not always about that grind and just like, well, I'll just play through it. And so I think what happens a lot of times when you build a mixed roster, especially if it's managed and coached and everything by Westerners, is you get these Korean players that come in and they're used to, like, so when things fall apart and when Dallas's season hasn't gone well, as it hasn't yet, over 3 seasons, you see the Koreans want to work through it, and their method of working through it is to triple down and just go hard and play more and blah 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 blah. And then they've got their coaches like, I want everybody to make sure you take 4 hours and go for a walk outside or go swimming or, you know, do this sort of thing. And they see the players trying to take the advice of the coaching staff and like do what they're told. And that to them just feels like you're just not trying. You're just ignoring it. Right. So they like get really frustrated and they feel like they're the only one that wants to improve. And if I had to guess, that's what I'd say it is. Right. I'd say it's that Envy's run like a Western organization. It's coached by a Western head coach. It's mostly Western players. And there's a couple of Koreans that drop in and it just doesn't mesh for that reason. I think Rascal talked about there wasn't a translator. Obviously would be really stressful and things like that. But there is one now. At least there's one listed on the Liquipedia page for the org. I have to assume that's accurate since we get so much of our information from the website.
If it's not accurate, then just disregard what we've said the last 218 episodes.
That's clearly why. But yeah, so I mean, it's just, but there could be more to it. And I don't know, do you really just think it's as simple as the classic East versus West kind of attitude, just not meshing? It's almost hard to buy into that when you look at San Francisco and you look at Atlanta and you look at Paris and all these other teams that seem to be able to. I mean, Houston doesn't have problems like this. They're not markedly better as a team, but they're not breaking up every year.
I would imagine it's part of that, but also just like it has to be just not. If it's scouting the right talent, and like we talked about it before, like a player is not just their skill in the game, it's also how do they mesh with the team? Do they buy into the team chemistry and flow, and like not even just in the game, just like, do you like being in this, like, do you like this job and this organization, right? Like when you're trying to work at a new job, if you're lucky enough, the salary is not the only thing you're looking at. If you're in a fortunate enough situation to have options, right? Which a lot of these players may be in. You're not just looking at, oh, well, this org is paying me more, therefore I'm going to go to them. I'm not looking at any of the other things, right? You're looking at a lot of factors. And if we reverse it and we say I'm going to play in a Korean league where the team is Korean run, and we'll make up a scenario where I know a nominal amount of Korean to be able to communicate with my teammates. But my team doesn't have a translator. The culture is completely different. Maybe and even outside of the culture difference, just like you said, if your mentality is about the game and about training and about practice, cue the Allen Iverson clip that I don't have, and about winning is different than your team, there's going to be a big impact to that, because it's, I've been on teams where there's a mismatch there. I've been on teams where I was like just playing it for fun, and there were people on the team that really wanted to win in like a casual league. That's not fun for anyone, because they're trying really hard, and I know we're really bad and we should just be trying to have fun, but the dude is screaming at his his sister's his niece, who is just playing this beer league softball team for fun, right? But the guy really, really wants to win, even though we're bad, right? So like there's a mismatch there. But I've also been on teams where we're a very competitive team and there's just players who don't care. That's a big difference as well, where it's like, there's an added amount of stress there when you are, especially when you're so bought into something like the Overwatch League and you're living and like you have shifted your life. It's not just a hobby, right? It is your job. And when you're in the league, at least for that amount of time, it is your life in a lot of ways. So when you are not aligned with your team, you're not aligned with the org, and the org doesn't have resources for you, it's a huge amount of stress. So I think it's got to be partly, maybe it is the East versus West thing, but I think it's more just the mentality difference, right? And it seems that Envy / the Dallas Fuel just haven't, if you don't have the resources to do that, and if you are, on the one hand, you're running your org in a certain way, right? And you're not necessarily bending to the whim of a specific player. I get that. But also, like, you need to be vetting the players, right? you need to be making the correct hires, essentially. It's not just, if a player doesn't work out, only part of the blame goes to the player, depending on the reason, obviously. But I don't know. I would be looking inward if I were the Dallas Fuel, at least on, because you said, like you mentioned, Death, this is a pattern now. Maybe it's happenstance every time, and you can look to that and say, oh, we got unlucky 4 times in a row, but I'm not making that bet. That's not a bet I'm willing to make.
No, it's a pretty bad bet at this point. And I would honestly expect this reboot to come out with either a fully Western or fully Korean Dallas Fuel for the 2021 season, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Because you can make a gamble that you've found the cause of it and that you've fixed it, or you can just remove it from the equation and get yourself a Korean coach and Korean players that all want to work the same way and operate the same way, or you can do the opposite. And I think you can find success in Overwatch League with either direction. And it's not all of them, right? Like, it's not all Korean players that can't handle it. Or Doha, I mean, granted, doesn't talk much. I've never even seen a tweet from Doha or anything like that, but he's still there, right? And like, if you were unhappy, you'd follow your buddy Decay out the door, I would think, right? Or at least that unhappy. So yeah, it's not that it can't work, but man, it's a bad look for the org. For sure. It's not like a detrimental one. This isn't Vancouver losing their entire roster midseason, all that stuff. But I think it does really potentially point to a fundamental issue and problem that this team has within it, whether it's top down or whether it's like you said, and just they're signing players that don't quite line up, just theoretically with how they want to approach things, and maybe they could just have a couple more conversations with the players before they sign them and really get to the bottom of, hey, how would you feel? Like, maybe it's just as simple as asking the question, like, how would you feel if your coach told you that after losing 2 games, the best way to go about getting better was to not play for 2 days and to take your mind off the game and try to mentally reset? Like, the answer to that question might be very, very telling for a lot of players, especially Koreans you're trying to bring into a mixed environment. So yeah, I don't know. They need to look inward, like you said, at either their scouting, their what's the vetting process, or whatever it is. Because like definitively a pattern here, and one that, I mean, we talked about all the other releases and all the other signings and stuff, and we glossed over the impact they might have on their roster. Let's talk about what we think the Dallas Fuel are without Decay. Blevins, where would you put them roughly in your power rankings without Decay going?
I'm putting them solidly in probably. I'm debating between 18th or 19th place. Yes, that's where I'm putting them, somewhere in that range.
Like 17th, like they're instantly in that Washington Justice tier of like, if the meta lines up, and now it becomes like, okay, as long as either Doha or Decay feels really, really comfortable on whatever hero you're putting them on, we're going to be mid-table. We're going to be able to be competitive. We can beat anybody if it's the right day, kind of a thing. To like, now it has to work perfectly. And like, Onigod stepped in and played reasonably well. This is just a team with a questionable backline to me. We were, like I said, we were talking about Crimzo in Discord, and apparently I need to look more into his stats, because his stats look a little more favorable than I think I've gleaned from watching them play. But you know, their backline to me has seemed like their biggest issue, and their front line is kind of like loaded on the note side of things right now. I haven't been super happy with Gamzu lately, but thinking back even to season 1, Gamzu was like the dive tank, right? Like if it wasn't him on Winston for Boston, they were doomed. And they looked best in Shanghai when he was there, when they were able to play dive and go into the Sombra based compositions. They were one of the teams like beating Goats before Goats really fell off, because of their kind of dive approach. So this instantly becomes kind of the top of the bottom tier teams to me, in their current form, and that's rough in the situation we're in, where, I mean, what if Decay was just hot that a couple of weeks when the playoffs were happening? You could see them maybe trying to play for one of those top 4 spots. It was hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine anybody outside the top 4 of NA right now breaking into it, but like maybe being in that game to like play for the chance to go to Korea to compete in the Final Four. You know, that was feasible, and that's feels lost now. If they feel like one of the 4 teams that don't have any hope of that at the moment. So definitely a rough time for Dallas Fuel fans, but there's plenty to criticize the org about. I just want to reiterate, the timing of this release should not be one of them.
Absolutely. Well, we have, I don't know if we've ever gone this long in the news section. I mean, we probably have. But we're going to move on here into which button? I don't remember this one.
It's tournament talk.
Got there. Okay, we'll start it off with the Dallas Fuel, who lost 0-3 to Philadelphia Fusion. LA Valiant took out the Houston Outlaws 3-2. Guangzhou.
Put a pin in that one.
Okay.
That's coming back.
Guangzhou Charge win 3-1 versus the Seoul Dynasty. Hangzhou Spark win 3-0 versus the London Spitfires. Sorry, Finny. Shanghai Dragons win 3-1 versus NYXL. Sorry, me. Paris Eternal win 3-1 versus the Washington Justice. Toronto Defiant win the battle for Canada 3-2 over the Vancouver Titans. San Francisco Shock win 3-0 versus the Houston Outlaws. We said we wouldn't go further into that, so we won't. Atlanta Reign go 3-1 versus the Dallas Fuel. Florida Mayhem win 3-1 over the LA Gladiators. Philly Fusion take it 3-0 versus the LA Valiant, and Vancouver Titans beat the Boston Uprising 3-0. All right, Death, take out your pin. Tell us about LA Valiant versus Houston Outlaws.
Well, we'll take the pin out when we get to, I think, the meta talk. But I mean, we can discuss the match in general. This was crazy, crazy close, and it was. Man, I'm glad I didn't watch Map 5 live. Just the timing of it. It was like Friday. It was right at 5 hit. Like it was the end of work. I needed to disconnect for a minute. So glad I didn't watch the end of that, because watching back, it was like Houston won it, like dead to rights, and then KSF just pulls out a blade and kills 4 people, and then they're able to 99.99 Map 5.3 absolutely last second steal it. It was as close of a loss as humanly possible there. But we're getting this matchup again this weekend. The Valiant are doing the exact same thing that Florida did to shoot themselves in the foot last tournament, which is hilarious to me. But yeah, so that one was crazy, crazy close. As far as the other matchups of the week, I'm trying to think. I thought it was a good bounce back for Guangzhou to get the win against Seoul. I thought that was very, very important for them. I wanted to see New York get the Shanghai win just because it would have re-solidified them as a top tier team again. Fell a little bit short, so we've still got a little bit of a question mark surrounding NY and what
makes
exactly
it more fun, right?
They are.
No,
whatever you got to tell yourself, bro.
It does not.
Yeah, the Battle for Canada was a very interesting one. Toronto puts down the reverse sweep there by Vancouver, so if you're looking for good ones to watch. And then I thought the Gladiators versus Florida was very well contested, if not the super closest. I don't know. It was just really entertaining, good Overwatch to me. So that's another one you guys can definitely check out. But I guess one conversation in the area that we're not going to go anywhere near. But by the way, if you just want to see the absolute worst take in Overwatch history, look into that the end of that match. Or ask us on Discord if you really can't find it. Don't want to rub anybody's nose in it or anything like that, but man, it was a ride.
Hilariously bad take.
Awful.
Really great copy pasta though. I think that's that's got to be a great. That's just a Twitch chat spam if I've ever seen one.
How dare you, Krusty? But another conversation that kind of came out at the end of this was Super played the Genji. This was on Gibraltar against Houston, and if I'm being perfectly honest with you, if I try to summarize what he got done and what he did on Genji in that match, I have to use the word nothing, or just pretend to fall asleep, because he just got nothing done, absolutely shut down by Repel's sleep darts. It was a super, super close match or game there. And just because he was there, right? If Tayo was there or if Rascal was in, I really think they just would have handily won that map and moved on. And at the end of it, Super's it's a shame that my Super Genji's become a meme and all this stuff. And Super's dad's tweeting at Sideshow about something Bren said, and he just got him confused. Happened. I can totally see that happening to anybody. And as long as you can't physically look at them at the time, because they it's like Nick Carter versus Mr. Clean right next to each other on the screen. But yeah, what?
Nothing. Go on. Keep going.
What? You don't see Nick Carter when you look at Bren. Is that what you're saying?
Oh wait, I'm thinking of never mind. I'm thinking of someone else. I'm thinking of someone else.
The blonde one from any boy band.
No, I was thinking of Nick Cannon, and I thought you were, and I'm like, I don't know who that is. Yeah, they don't look. All I'll say is that they don't look alike.
Okay, I'll have to take your word for that. But I just thought it was so funny, and then the casters were retreating a little bit, and oh, well, I'm going to start to approach it with seriousness and all these things. And it's why? I don't understand. There's nothing serious about it. It's literally a meme. Stop acting like it's otherwise. Your whole team, they sat down with every member of your team, Super, and said, what do you think about Super Genji? They laughed.
Yeah.
They made fun of it. They said, oh no, my team's boomed. Universally. All of them laughed, and it was just a ridiculous notion.
Yeah.
So when your team puts that out there, what do you want anybody to do with it? When you
Yeah.
make a meme and people run with it, you can't be mad it's a meme.
Right.
You made it. Like, you created the meme.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, that doesn't look anything like it, Bren.
Yeah.
But so yeah, just it was hilarious to me to see every reaction that came out of that match.
Yeah.
Because that one, it just was like almost as ludicrous to me as the other take.
Yeah.
Like, of course it's a me. Like, you have to not get completely obliterated by the team that ended their regular season with 6 wins on the hero in order to be considered
Right.
not a meme. Like,
Right.
I'm sorry, that's just the case. So just funny to me. I will now absolutely definitively and without any variance be referring to Super Genji as a meme going forward.
Yeah.
That seems to be the only reaction to me. So
Yeah. It's a meme. Let's
it's absolutely a meme, right? Your head coach is like tweet conversationing about how sad and weird it is that main tanks think their Genji's so good 2 days before he puts you out there. Like, there's no indication other than you popped off against, like, you were able to pull it off against some awful teams.
Right. Against a team that is barely considered an Overwatch League team.
And I gave him his credit when he did it.
True.
I read off all the stats that he was top 3 in.
Yeah.
We said, I mean, it's against Boston, but he did well enough that I need to consider it. And now I've seen it against the team.
It's been considered.
Bare minimum competitive.
Right.
I saw the outcome. I saw it side by side. Like, map 2 was Rascal, I think it was, right? And then map 3 was Super. I saw them side by side. If under any circumstance they're playing Super over Tayo or Rascal, it's a meme.
Yep.
Definitively. So I'm sorry, Super and Mr. Super's dad. It's a meme.
Yeah. 100%.
Meme of the week.
Yes, meme of the week. Also,
Tag Overwatch League today.
Also, how dare you, Krusty? Let's move on here. We've got some brackets to talk about, Death. We'll start with the Asia Pacific region. Of course, Shanghai starts with a bye. So the first match to pick from is Guangzhou Charge versus NYXL, and just gonna go ahead and say you got this one dead wrong.
I mean, this one is a coin flip.
Yeah.
I think the Asia bracket is phenomenal because I can flip any result, and until the finals, I think like okay. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. Like, if I'd done this bracket 5 minutes earlier, it could have looked completely differently than it did.
Yeah.
I did give Guangzhou the win, though. I think when you get kind of surprised by a team like New York that's maybe a little bit struggling and you're considered the stronger team at the moment, I think it's really hard for a team like New York to repeat that. So no matter what, I don't expect the 3-0 that New York got over them a couple of weeks ago. I think it's going to be super, super close. But yeah, I think the Guangzhou Charge are just a little more established at the moment, right? They've got their plans figured out. They've been working on them a little bit longer, but absolutely a coin flip kind of a game. Like I said, the entire first round is really, and yeah, I did pick Guangzhou, but New York could very easily be coming out of this game as the victor. And I'm pumped no matter who wins because I want to watch both of them go against Shanghai in a tournament setting in the semifinals here. So I think we're in for a treat in this one, and the winner goes against Shanghai. I think that's great too. So super pumped. I assume you've got New York here though, huh?
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
easiest 5-0 ever.
Easiest 5-0. Yeah, I mean, you make a lot of really good points, Seth. I mean, they're just objectively incorrect. But let's move on here. Talk about Hangzhou versus Seoul. Death, you've got Seoul taking this one.
I do. Hangzhou was able to get the win over London this weekend. Sorry, Finney, I watched London this weekend. It's one of I haven't caught a ton of them. Boy, they look rough. So I don't have a ton of faith in Hangzhou just for getting that win there, and I'm still. They don't deserve it, but I'm still just like leaning on how individually talented Seoul is.
Right.
And it's just very difficult for me to reconcile reading their roster and watching them play.
Right.
So I'm leaning Seoul in this one because Hangzhou's only beaten London and recent memory for me. I know there's probably other ones. Feel free to at me and tell me how much better they've looked or whatever. But I don't know. They can't have looked that good, right? Because their spot in their seating was third. Okay, maybe they have looked better. Yeah, I don't know. Again, it really is just like a sickness with me and Seoul, where I see Profit, I see Gesture, I see Bedos, like I see all the pieces, and they have to add up to a good team, right? I don't know, I'm talking myself out of this pick as I make it. So Seoul's winning, and I'm saying it now so I don't change my mind.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me, I don't know how many games.
17th time though, and
it's
that's their fault.
Maybe it's their fault. But yeah, I'd probably flip this. I don't know. It's tough. I mean, this, like you said, Death, this region
and
looks
London
really
are
good.
the only teams I'd pick Seoul over. I'll say that much right now.
You'd pick okay, yeah. Yep.
I would pick Seoul over Hangzhou and London and nobody else in the APAC bracket at the moment.
Right.
So I'm learning to an extent, but not fully.
Not fully. Got it.
We'll see.
All right. We now talk about Chengdu versus London, and you already talked about how you're not super big on London, so you got Chengdu here.
Yeah, I'm really drinking the Chengdu Kool-Aid.
Only partially because you're going to be a ball one trick.
I'm my inner Ameng has been channeled. I'm fully converted to the Church of Ameng, and I will worship at his altar until they lose. And it hasn't happened yet. This meta, I just really think Balls is really well situated in the meta game. Obviously, much better when Orissa's not available as an option, and it will be. But they've committed to the weirdness, right? And I think that gives them an edge like it did in past years, and they're better now, right? So it's very limited to the meta as I see it right now, where the ball is extremely viable, where Jinmu gets to play the Genji, which he really does excel on and plays very well there. So this is very meta dependent. My love of Chengdu, it will drop off the moment this tournament ends, I promise you. After the tournament, we'll talk about why and the direction it feels like the metagame's headed, et cetera, et cetera. But if they can't find, like right now, there's just so many of the comfort picks for Chengdu line up with what their weird style is, and it just feels like the right time for them to randomly peak and do well. And it's really just a shame for them it's not the end of season playoffs, because I think this meta right now in the end of season playoffs could have led to like a Cinderella story for the Pandas, but
should be really cool.
Hopefully they can make the most of it and fulfill the legend that I filled out this bracket to be.
Well, we'll continue that on, and you've got Shanghai. So your second round match is Shanghai versus Guangzhou, and you got Shanghai taking this one down.
Yeah, I mean, they're squarely the best team in the region, and there's really only one weakness they have, and since this is the semifinals and not the finals, I won't start talking about it yet, but I think regardless of who the opponent is here, you have to view them as the favorite. They've earned that over just repeated very strong performances. So give me Shanghai here with a probably 3-1. I haven't given scores for the other ones, but I'll start now. Why not?
Sure. Why not change it in the middle of it? I love it. Okay. And then you're still on the Chengdu train here. You've got them over Seoul.
Yeah, like I said, the only two teams I would pick the Seoul Dynasty to beat in the region right now are their round one opponents and Chengdu's round one opponents. So I feel really confident in this half of the bracket. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. And I think Chengdu gets a very easy semifinal, at least compared to the other half of the bracket. So give me the Chengdu win here.
Which means you've got the Shanghai Dragons, this is now their third time making it to the finals. They just won the previous tournament versus the Chengdu Hunters. Who do you have, Death?
I'm taking the Chengdu Hunters. I don't even care. At me all you want. I'm about this team in this metagame right now. I'm tripling down.
I love it.
Putting my claim in here. Chengdu champions. they're going to rebrand after this tournament and just run with it. Because like I said, everything seems to fit. And the one weakness that is very apparent from Shanghai, also Guangzhou won the last tournament. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, I'm wrong.
Summer Showdown, was won by Guangzhou. I'm going into the May Melee because it really, to double check as well, because it really will solidify. Okay, they did win that one against Seoul, who was 4-3, but that was against Seoul, who was the 7th seed in the region and is probably the 6th seed in the region now or something like that, right? Like Seoul just got a little bit hot in that meta, but wasn't a good enough team to take them down. Shanghai loves to C9 in finals. Like the pressure gets on and they forget the point exists and they just find a way to completely collapse and blow it. Like they're the better team. If this was just about who's the best team, line them up and go, I'd pick Shanghai.
Right.
But I need to pick the team that's going to win in the finals of this tournament. And that to me says Shanghai is going to have a fair few unforced errors. And they're just going to cost themselves a map or two. And I think Chengdu is good enough. And they've proven throughout the qualifiers, throughout this event. When you turn your earphone to the microphone, I can hear myself.
Oh, okay.
I assume that means they can't too, so be a little careful. So yeah, I really think it's just a matter of Shanghai's gonna blow it, right? Like they just seem to really, really do. I think it was Wolf broke out the Shang 9. I dubbed on them when it happened on the broadcast.
Yeah.
So like it's definitively a thing. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Like it's just nerves or whatever.
Right.
You'd think those get better over time, but man, it's a rough. It's a rough situation to be in. So yeah, this is definitely me predicting the upset here. Picking with my heart a little bit, but yeah, I'm Chengdu champs. Sign it up.
I like it. I've got the bracket the same, except New York is going to win all of their matches and, of course, upset the it wouldn't be an upset. They're going to win against the Chengdu Hunters. So that's my bracket, but I don't know. I think we're both pretty unlikely to be correct in this, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But let's round out the show here with the NA region, and we'll start off with Atlanta Reign versus the Vancouver Titans.
Yeah, boy, Vancouver's still looking rough. They're still playing on high ping. Atlanta is going to be getting more and more comfortable with their new options, new roster. I still want to see more from Erster.
Yeah.
It's really what it's going to take to really level this team up and get them back to that competing for against the top level teams. But they don't have to do that in this one. They just have to beat Vancouver, who like squeaked in and was just able to play. So yeah, this should be a pretty easy one. Probably not even a super fun watch, if I'm being honest.
Yep. We then have the match we alluded to earlier, where LA Valiant have chosen the Houston Outlaws.
Yeah, this is the exact same thing as before the last time, right? Like,
yeah.
Florida barely squeaked out the win versus Houston in the qualifiers and then picked them because they wanted to make a statement and show that they can beat them handily. And then the maps change a little bit and all of a sudden they're a little bit better for Houston and they've got the advantage and they beat you and knock you out of the tournament. So congratulations, Valiant, for not watching or paying attention in the last one. I mean, you had your own matches to get ready for, so I get it. But like, what are you trying? You just beat them. You don't have to prove that. You can just make it easier on yourself. They didn't want to. So here we are. I think most people are going to pick the Valiant in this one. If you're calling this anything other than a coin flip, you're lying to yourself. They showed how crazy close it was in the last one. Linkser says they got lucky. I don't know if I buy into luck. I think more like Houston kind of thought they won and took a nap a little bit, like just a little micro nap for 2 seconds, and it was enough for a blade to come out and catch them off guard a little bit. But I thought Houston was the better team watching that game. I mean, overall, they just didn't quite pull it out. Happens fairly often, especially in the 5 mappers. So yeah, this one should be, I think, slightly favored in Houston's favor in the numbers and the predictions. I think it'll go hard the other direction. So this is to me an easy one to flip, especially because I want it to happen. But notably too, Houston's done after this tournament until the playoffs start, right? Like they've played all of their regular season games. So have Guangzhou, and there's another APAC team that has. Philly's done. No, Philly's got one more game to play. It's Guangzhou, it's Houston, and it's Chengdu who are finished with their regular seasons. So this is a little bit of like they're going to play in the postseason, but there's a very strong finish well to feel to this,
right,
for Houston, and I think that gives them the ability. They don't need to look forward. They don't need to worry about the next meta ever. Their coaching staff is 100% focused on beating the LA Valiant, every member of it. We don't know how any of the teams, differentiate their coaching staff and have them work on things. But there's a new patch in which Genji sucks, and it's on live right now. And I can guarantee you most of these teams have coaches looking at that patch, planning for that patch, theory crafting for it, collecting data and numbers. Houston, like I said, don't have to care about that, even in the slightest. The only thing that matters is here and now. They get a nice long break. They get a nice long prep period. They're going to be everybody's favorite scrim partner for a little while. What patch do you want to play on? We don't care. Like, let's just, we're just getting good at Overwatch and getting good at team synergy together. So, this meta doesn't fit either of these teams quite perfectly. There's some issues, I think, across the board for both of them. And last week that made for some incredibly entertaining Overwatch, and I really hope that lives up again. Almost more than I want the win, I want that good of a game again.
Yeah.
Because it was a very good, very fun watch, especially for me because I missed map 5.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. All right, let's move on and talk about Dallas Fuel versus the Washington Justice. And Death, ooh, you're not picking the Dallas Fuel here.
The Washington Justice. I've got to go with them. I do think Dallas is the slightly better team, but I think they're like mid. It affects the whole organization, what's going on there in Dallas right now. Their owner just went out and said, we're firing everybody.
Yeah.
So now the head coach and all the assistant coaches that remain and all the players are still showing up to work, and they're probably pretty distracted. Where am I going to play next year? What am I going to do? Am I staying in Overwatch? Am I going back down to contenders? And there are questions on bouncing around in the head of the Dallas Fuel players right now, and that's just a distraction. That's all probably true for the Washington Justice as well, but it's not public and it's not in their face, and they're not going to be being asked about it, and they're not going to be making their mods ban people in their streams for asking questions and stuff like that. And that's, I think, going to drain Dallas and just cause them to lose. And Washington they beat Houston a couple weeks ago. There's some level of increase in their performance here. It's nothing crazy. But there is something going on in Washington. They're getting a little bit better, and Dallas just got markedly worse. So it might be an overreaction. And I think if this match was played in 2 weeks from now when everything calmed down a little bit, I'd pick Dallas. But right now, like, there's too much chaos surrounding the Fuel. They're gonna drop this one.
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard for me to imagine a team coming and playing at full performance. I mean, they're not going to be at full performance anyway, right? Because they just got rid of arguably their best player. But also just knowing that you're on a team that is likely going to either cut you or drastically change, if not you specifically, the people who you've been working with. That is just, take away the Overwatch part of it. That is just not a good spot to be in. It's not only just like a lame duck position where you're just like, well, what does it really matter? It's also like, I am just how happy can you possibly be to come in and work when you know that not only are you on the chopping block, but so are the people that you work with that you may be either good friends with or whatever. So yeah, no, I'm not really feeling well about the Dallas Fuel, as many I'm sure aren't either. So yeah, I don't hate the pick. That said, Washington's still pretty bad, but we'll see. We'll see. All right. last first round match is the Toronto Defiant versus the LA Gladiators. And Deathblow sure is muted.
Toronto was the 4 seed here, which is to me just a complete aberration. They beat Washington and they beat Vancouver, barely beat Vancouver, to get their 2-2 record in the qualifiers. They're still the team they've been. They got just get dismantled by Philly and Paris in these qualifiers as well. The Gladiators aren't one of those two teams, but we're still not fielding Surefour. We're still just not making the kind of level ups that I really want to see. And I don't know. I just can't pick them. The Gladiators actually look like they're making significant improvements, and the meta does push OGE back to Orisa, which has been a problem for him, but at the end of the day, I just it's a tier difference here. So the upset is possible, but they had their Cinderella run into the semis last tournament. It's not going to happen this time.
Yeah. Okay, so those were the, I guess, technically the kind of like the plans. And we had San Francisco, Florida, Philly, and Paris, who now got to choose their opponents. Of course, we don't know.
We'll get to.
Yeah. We'll get to choose their opponents. But based on this bracket that we're going off of, which is yours, Death, you've got San Francisco versus Washington, Florida versus Gladiators, Philly versus Reign, and Paris versus Houston. And you don't have any upsets in these matches.
I don't. There's so much separation between these top 4 teams and the entire rest of the league that there's no surprises from here on out in my bracket. I don't think. Everything is very cut and dry. San Francisco picks first. The worst team I have left is the Washington Justice. I expect them to pick them. They might not because they're San Francisco. They've got that swagger. But I think this gives them an opportunity to play Super Genji in the tournament, which I think they want to do to keep the meme going because it's a meme. And so I expect them to kind of take that route. I also think they did it last tournament. They didn't do anything spicy. They just take the worst one. That's fine.
Yeah.
The next team to pick would be the Paris Eternal. I do have them going against the Houston Outlaws. I think Houston is respected in the sense that every team has a healthy fear of them. They understand that Houston's talented enough to beat them at any given time, whether you're San Francisco and it's happened semi-recently. I think it was like last year or something. But even still, they remember that, right? Like it's in their mind that it happened. That team, the roster is largely the same enough that it's in their mind. But at the same time, the Gladiators, like I said, they're on the up. Atlanta is probably just a little bit stronger of a team, right? They could go in another direction with this one. And I think Paris might pick a team that they wanted to tell to sit down. But of the available options, I just, again, pick the way I would. I would just pick the worst team available to me and go. To me, that was Houston. Paris is markedly better than my boys and should get that win pretty easy. So that's how I went with that one. The next team to pick was Philly. Again, I just tried to slot them in the way I thought they fit. Atlanta with their struggles, with their roster changes, feels, I don't know, I'd rather play them than the Gladiators at the moment. But no surprises, Philly gets the win. Florida stuck with the Gladiators, not rebounding because they've just been solid top end of the middle kind of a team. There's really like 2 tiers, right? There's like Paris, San Francisco, Philly, and then there's Florida, and then there's everybody else in the middle. So there's, half a tier difference at least there. That's where I'd look for your upset though. Is the Gladiators could be able to steal one from Florida. Atlanta have an outside shot against Philly because Philly doesn't really fit this metagame either, I don't think. They're making do, and they're just significantly better than most of the teams, so they're getting away with it. But I don't know. Atlanta's got a shot too, but I'm not predicting these. I think the teams as a whole are just significantly better. But those 2 middle games, Philly, Atlanta, Florida, Gladiators, that's where I'd look for my upsets if I wanted one.
Well, and then we're moving in to the top 4 here, and you're keeping with the tier list, Death. You've got San Francisco taking on Florida, and you've got Philly versus Paris, and you've got the 2 higher seeds taking this one out, San Francisco and Paris.
Yeah, the seeds for the tournament bear out here, not the overall standings. So if you think Paris beating Philly is an upset, then there's your upset for this round. I don't, at least not in the meta the way it stands at the moment. So Philly's going to get exposed in that one, probably beats like 3-1 or like, I don't know. I think it's probably going to be pretty apparent who the better team in this meta game is when we get to that match, assuming it bears out. And then the other side, San Francisco is just
they're San Francisco.
they're the gold standard right now.
Yeah.
Florida is a very solid team, and that is like almost rarefied air in this season to be very solid and consistent. So that's great, but that doesn't get you out of the semis in my bracket here.
Yep. And then your finals here, as it has bared out in your tournament, is San Francisco versus the Paris Eternal. And I mean, the gold's the gold, Death. San Fran.
Yeah, I think it really does boil down to the Genji in this matchup. I was just pretty impressed with Rascal's Genjis, and I think you have Tayo if you don't want that super aggressive style of Genji. So there might be 2 Genji players here that see the stage. You know, if you're on Gibraltar, maybe you go with Rascal, since you're probably going to be playing dive tanks. You want a little bit more of an aggressive style, and then you go with Tayo, or it could be Rascal too, to be honest, if you're in more of the Orisa compositions and you're trying to play team centric stuff and halt people for the dashes and all that. So yeah, I think it's San Francisco's tournament to lose here, but this is the least confident I am, right? I do think in this metagame, Paris is a little bit stronger, but San Fran is just a better overall team. I'm going with the overall for now, but it's very, very close. If that's the finals we get, we're in for a treat.
Yeah, should be a really good finals to watch, but in your brackets, Death, you've got the Chengdu Hunters taking APAC and San Francisco taking the NA region, and we'll certainly be talking about it in the next episode when we get to cover the tournament as well. But Death, that's going to be it for this episode. Anything else before we get going here?
No, don't forget to watch me feed on ball.
Yes, make sure to check Deathblow out at twitch.tv/DeathblowTTV, but you can check out the show everywhere, High Noon Podcast. We're everywhere the podcasts are, and we're just everywhere in general for High Noon Podcast. You can go to patreon.com/High Noon Podcast, Twitter, Twitch, all that stuff, High Noon Podcast. But that is going to be it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. For Deathblow, I'm Blevins. And remember, it's High Noon.